Everyone, welcome back to Pine Hollow out of Diagnostics. Today we have a real quick one. 2007 Honda CRV, 166,000 miles. My neighbor's car. She said, or her complaint was, there's a whooshing sound and it's kind of low on power. Interesting. I didn't need to take it on a long test drive. You rev it up and it's like zzz. It's kind of a weird sound. So you know, I went under the car, pressed the gas pedal, and you could hear an exhaust, you could smell it. You could smell like raw exhaust before it gets to the back of the, you know, through the system, through the converter, like you know, that raw exhaust smell, like you have a manifold leak or something. What I found was the upper gasket from the manifold to the downpipe was pretty well destroyed. I mean, okay, no big deal, just needs a gasket. Well, kind of a big deal. The exhaust manifold on this thing is behind the engine. I took off the heat shield here from the bottom. I was trying to get the bolts out and they were starting to bend. So before I snapped them off, I'm like, you know what? Let's do this the right way, like Eric O would do. Use that guy. The heat treatment. Got up here with the torch. It was kind of a tight fit. Heated up. You can't even see the bolts from here. You kind of see one of them. So I heated up the top of the bolt. You know, this part that was sticking up out of the welded nut. And then squirted it with a water bottle. So this trick has worked pretty well for me. Heat it up red hot. Squirt it with water. Hit it with the impact from the bottom. Bolts came out. Got a new gasket, put it in. Even did a test with the smoke machine on the exhaust pipe. It, you know, at first you could see the leak with the old gasket. With the new one, it was a lot better. So, you know, I fired it up, revved it up, and the sound was still there. It was like zzzz, zzzz. You could smell it. It filled the garage with like smoke. Not a good situation. So I'm like, well, what the heck is wrong with this thing? Look under the car. So here's the downpipe. There's I replaced the bolts. New gasket up there. I get to this thing. It's rattling inside. So the catalyst material fell apart and actually plugged the exhaust. So it was building pressure in here and escaping through the gasket there. That's just, you know, spring bolts. So it's supposed to hold it up, but it still has to have some movement. But this is not original. This is not an original Honda converter. It doesn't have the heat shield. This has already been replaced. Interesting. So now, instead of a new gasket, it needs a new catalytic converter, because you can't really drive it like this. The engine might overheat and it's just not a good scenario. So the estimate went from, you know, like $100 to, well, in Rock Auto, in another aftermarket converter, just the part, you know, maybe $300, $200 to $300. I looked up the Honda OEM converter. It retails for almost $1,700. So I'm like, if she wants to invest that much money, but I said we can put on another aftermarket converter, gaskets, bolts, whatever, and get this car back on the road. But that, you know, the diagnosis here was not as straightforward. You know, exhaust leak, but why? Because there's pressure building up in the exhaust and it's blowing out the gasket. It's kind of interesting. I actually haven't seen that before. And the car still, you know, ran pretty okay, but at high RPM, high load, it was definitely not performing very well. So there you go, just a quick little story. Definitely make sure your exhaust flows nicely. Honda CRV, got a brand new aftermarket catalytic converter, Rock Auto. You can see the catalyst material in there. Taking off the old one, pretty easy. everything is actually coming apart. And lady, that is your problem. I don't think that's supposed to be in there. Wow, there's the plug. So the catalyst apparently broke apart and got wedged like this in that pipe, and then that's it. Let's get this pipe out of here and see what else is left in there. Alright, we got the pipe off. There is the source of the rattle. There's just pieces of catalyst in there, so it wasn't due to a misfire, it was just due to poor construction. No bueno. Oh well. You can see through the oxygen sensor hole. The whole thing is like migrating. I don't think it's supposed to do that. So we also have to make sure that there's nothing else stuck in the exhaust pipe there going downstream. Make sure that's all free flowing, and put the new one on, and hopefully it lasts a few years. Alright, everything's back together. Let's take this beast for a spin. Just for consistency, we're looking at some oxygen sensor data and make sure that downstream the sensor 2 is at least showing that, you know, the cat is working. So we don't want the check engine light to come on here just because we replaced the catalytic converter. So we could rev it up a little bit. So this is a, you know, wideband air-fuel ratio sensor, so we can't say that this is good or bad. We just have to let the monitor run and, you know, test drive this thing, make sure the power's good. But other than that, yeah, blown exhaust gasket because aftermarket catalytic converter fell apart, plugged the exhaust pipe, poor performance, rattles. So not too difficult of a diagnosis, but can kind of throw you for a loop if you just like, hey, exhaust gasket's blown, but it's blown for a reason. Alright, we took it around the block. Catalyst test complete. Awesome. O2 sensors are good, so that makes me confident that this car is fixed. And of course, make sure that there are no permanent or temporary codes stored. Awesome. Good to go.